possible. And thank you for reading.
Even Manny Pacquiao, the gold, I don't think there'll be a problem for Manny.
Has its share of great fights. But every once in a while, human mind can also be controlled and nothing.
Only here para sa bayan. And that's the opening bell for Round by Round presented by Eastern Communications. Mabuhay Pilipinas, welcome world. I'm Boyet Sison.
And I'm Ryan Sangalia. Dennis Principe joins us later on in the show.
Ryan, there's so many Filipino boxers that have that are trying to carve a name for themselves in the world of boxing. Let's take a look at four of these gentlemen who might or will probably be names that the public will start to be hearing more from in the coming months or in the coming years. Let's start off with a super flyweight by the name of KJ Kataraja.
Yes, KJ Kataraja, very exciting young fighter. And when you're looking for the next guy to latch onto, to follow, you're looking for a number of things. You're looking for excitement. You're looking for skill, heart. You're looking for personality. And in a lot of ways, I feel like KJ Kataraja embodies all of those things, in terms of balance. Now, he's 26 years old. He was a star in the amateurs here in the Philippines. He's 13-0 right now, 11 knockouts from Talisay, Cebu. He turned professional in 2015. Now, what I like about his story is that he got into boxing because of the anime show Hajime no Ippo, right? And in a lot of ways, he is the real life Hajime no Ippo. Ippo Gala, he was balancing boxing in school in the show. And he did the same thing as a pro. He was studying criminology at the University of the Visayas while also being this big, prospect, this very hype prospect back at the old Ala gym. He was fighting on nationwide TV and then taking the jeepney to school in the morning. But very intelligent in and out of the ring. I remember when I would go down to the Ala gym, he would be like one of the few guys I could speak to and converse with in English. So I always appreciated that. That helped me a lot. But he has a very exciting style. He's strong. He can box. He has the mindset of not letting the other guy get the last punch in. So he's very good at winning rounds as well. He wins exchanges, wins rounds. He does a lot of interesting things to promote himself. Now when the Ala gym closed up, he moved over to the Sandman boxing stable in Gensan. But he promotes himself in some interesting ways. Like he has his own YouTube channel where he posts a lot of different content. We see that a lot with some of the younger boxers that are coming up now, like Yumir Marshall and Irish Magno. So he has sort of an entrepreneurial mindset as well. But he just fought last month. He stopped Chris Alfante in 7 rounds, and would like to see him get a little bit more active coming out of the pandemic, because he's 26 years old. This is the time where he needs to be making a move. But in terms of ability and experience, you can't get better schooling than sparring with Donny Nietes.
For now, looking at how the top 10 boxers in this division is concerned, who do you think will be a good next fight for KJ?
I mean, for right now, I think that Kataraja needs to stay busy, right? That's the important thing for him, because he still needs that experience. He's been fighting at the 10-round level, so he's closer than his number of fights would suggest. But I don't know that he's ready yet to jump from someone like Chris Alfante to going to fight like Kosei Tanaka, for instance, or obviously not like a Chocolatito Gonzalez, that level of champion.
Yeah.
You have to have that interim. So I would like to see him jump into the top 15. Like, go at some of these guys. I think that it's a bit tough because those are very deep divisions, but he is rated, with the WBO, for instance, so he can take those steps.
Our next fighter to talk about is Mike Plania, who's a super bantamweight, and so far, Mike Plania's record is 25 wins with 12 knockouts, and only one loss so far for this 24-year-old. Where does he play in the world of the super bantamweights, Ryan?
I mean, it's kind of interesting for him because he can be a super bantamweight. He had fought as a bantamweight in the past, so it's tough to. I think for him, he has to pick a division, and I think he's going at 122 super bantamweight, as you mentioned. He was supposed to be on the big super bantamweight card on Showtime next month. I'm told that probably isn't going to happen right now, but he's a guy that you can really turn him loose. He's 24 years old, but he fought Josh Greer, who was the bantamweight #1 contender last year, right when the top ranked bubble cards started coming out, and he was on one of the first ones, maybe even the first one, and he pulled off a big upset in beating Josh Greer, which was interesting because Greer was the #1 contender for another Filipino, John Manuel Casimero, but it was another Filipino who did his business for him. But Plania, you can kind of turn him loose against anyone. After fighting Greer, taking a step back, it might be a little bit difficult. That was in June of 2020 when he fought Greer. He did not fight again for about a year or so. It was kind of he took a stay busy fight, and he was not as active as a result of the pandemic. But I would say let him get another win or two and put him in with anybody, because you got to remember his one loss was against a former world champion as well. So that's he's not someone who's going to be overawed. And he's fought the world championship level in the amateurs when he was he represented the Philippines at the 2011 Youth World Games. That was the culmination really of a long 300 fight amateur career. So interesting thing is his nickname is Magic Mike, right? Now I'm told it's because he does magic things in the ring, and not because he sounds like karaoke.
He has a lot of tricks.
But he doesn't work as a male stripper with Channing Tatum. So it's strictly a boxing thing. Okay, so let's get that clear. But he trains out in Miami with Mauro Fernandez, the Cuban trainer, and he gets great sparring out there. He's worked with guys like Guillermo Rigondeaux. So he's someone making a move in his career. I think in the next 12 months we'll see him either move into position for a world championship or already fight for a world championship.
That's nice. And now our next fighter is a former Olympian who, for me, it's kind of entered professional boxing kind of belatedly already, as he is already in his 30s. But since he debuted in January of 2019, has already amassed a 7-win card with 5 knockouts so far. The King's Warrior, former Olympian Charlie Suarez. It's like as I've said, Ryan, Charlie already is in his 30s. Is it already a bit too late for him to enter the professional boxing ranks?
Well, what they say is like 30 is the new 20 in some ways. So he's it's interesting that we've been talking about an Olympian turning professional, because prior to Barriga, Mark Anthony Barriga, who was the last Philippine Olympic boxer to turn professional. It had been a long time. Like the top guys, just stayed on the national team forever, and they collected their stipend. But Suarez is sort of entering, he's leaving the shark cage, so to speak, and he's making it his way. So that tells you that he has some belief in himself, that he's able to make that bet on himself instead of just sticking around and collecting, his paycheck every month. So, but you're right. He is 33 years old. He has a deep amateur background. So, we mentioned this. He fought at the 2016 Olympics, and he lost his first fight against the Great Britain boxer, but that was a very close fight. And Joe Cordino is a good prospect now as a professional, but he had his 2 golds at the SEA Games and the silver at the 2014 Asian Games. And we're talking about like someone who has faith in themselves. He was competing for, I believe it was Milan, at the AIBA pro boxing tournament,
Yeah,
and he had shoulder injuries, I believe on both shoulders, if I'm not mistaken. And he went in there and he boxed against the prime Vasily Lomachenko. So if that doesn't tell you that he has self-belief, nothing does. He went the distance there. So he's a very tough guy, but he's got to make a move now. He's got to make a move. He's at 130 pounds. So, he has that going for him, that he is a larger boxer, someone who can, maybe get a little bit more attention than some of the flyweights could. But he's got to make another bet on himself and find a way to get to the U.S. and fight some top guys, because
you mentioned about his wealth of amateur experience, with a record so far that, as I've mentioned, 7 wins, 5 by knockout. Is that wealth of experience really going to be the thing that's going for him? With that wealth of experience be really the factor that will get him to approach being a professional better than everybody else that have gone through the motion, so to speak?
Yeah, because there's nothing that Suarez hasn't seen in the ring. So when you fought all those kinds of fighters, especially in Asia, because there's such a diversity of styles, and you'll in the international level, you'll meet like boxers, brawlers, people who switch dances, people who come at you from all different angles, long boxers, short boxers. He's seen it all. So that will give him the confidence and the composure that he needs, to excel at the championship level as a professional. The trade-off can be that that's a lot of wear and tear on your body. We mentioned that he's had injuries in the past. It could be very draining, physically, emotionally, mentally, to be a boxer for all those years. That's why Manny Pacquiao, it kind of works to his advantage that he only fights very infrequently, because he only has to love boxing for 8 weeks. And so he loves boxing for 8 weeks at a time, and then he forgets that it exists. But for some of these fighters who have these long amateur careers, the burnout, when they turn professional, they're doing it because it's, a career, not because, they're so hungry to prove something. So, there can be a draw. There could be a trade-off there.
From the amateur Charlie Suarez to the professional Charlie Suarez, what have you seen that you liked?
What I always liked about him as an amateur was that he had this he entered the ring like he was the boss. And that kind of means something to me, because it tells me, hey, listen, I've been here, I've done all these things. Like when he entered the SEA Games in 2019, he looked like he was, in charge of things. So that was important in the way that he's expecting to win. He has the mindset of a winner. And I think that now as a pro, he looks more seasoned. Like he's not going out there and being impatient. He's taking his time, setting up his punches. And that's why he's got 5 knockouts and 7 wins. I don't think he's a massive puncher, but he does better because he takes his time.
Well, from the most senior, so to speak, of the foursome that we're going to talk about today, we now go to the 22-year-old, actually the youngest of the 4 boxers that we are discussing. He is the Doberman, Dave Apollinario, who has a record of 15 wins, 10 by knockout, and still hasn't lost in his professional career, which began in 2017. Now, how do you rate this southpaw, Ryan?
It's interesting. He's a southpaw, and he has a tool that I don't often see a lot of Filipino fighters use, and that's the jab. And when you have a good southpaw jab, and it's a confident jab as well, that kind of sets him apart, I think, because he's not an overawing sort of like dynamo. Like he's not going to go out there and overwhelm you and just make you look like just tear through you. He could set up his punches but he throws them in combination, and he is defensively responsible. So he has very good schooling, even though he didn't fight at the international level, that the way that someone like Plania had, or Suarez. He knows what he's doing. He knows who he is. He comes from a boxing family. So he's been doing this for a long time. He's 22 years old, but he's very mature for his age, and very intelligent, as I said. But he fought. He was a Philippine National Games youth champion. He won Palarong Pambansa before turning professional in 2017. So he's someone who really loves the sport of boxing. I still want to see him take that next step going abroad, maybe getting some more experience sparring there, or even start campaigning in the US. He's promoted by JC Manangkil of Sandman Promotions. So Manangkil has some connections abroad. Hopefully he can use them and get Apollinario some more exposure to use those skills that he has against.
For a lot of these boxers who are, some of them are based in Manila, they get to fight some bouts in all parts of the country. Will it be really prudent at this point in their careers to just pack up and go and stay in the United States, for example?
Yeah, it would, because it's when you are only sparring in a certain area, even if it's the best boxers that you're sparring against in that area, you're going to get used to only competing against that style, and you need to see every style. Like someone like Floyd Mayweather, if you look at his early boxing career, he fought everyone. He every kind of style that there was. He had seen it all. So when you can do that and you can adjust to things, you don't need to necessarily come up with specific plans for boxers, because you get in the ring. That's why you see a lot of the top fighters, they say they don't watch tapes of their opponents, because they've seen it all. They know. They take the first round to get a feel for what the guy has, and then they adjust. It
gets to be instinctive already on their part. Once they start getting into the swing of things, let's say if they start say in an actual fight, the first minute will be already an indicative for them as to how their opponent is.
I think it's important. I think it's important, not just that, but also for your confidence. Because when you're out there and you're sparring with different fighters, and you're doing good against foreigners, that does help the boxers. That's one thing that you can't recreate, because you're beating up your own countrymen. It's kind of like, all right, yeah, maybe I'm just the best here, but you want to get a feel for how you do, against the world.
Well, of course, that's one thing which this young fighter will be able to develop in the succeeding months and the succeeding years. But we are talking about the promising fighters that a lot of our audience will be seeing. And I hope all of you people that are watching the program support the boxers that are carving a name for themselves, and watch them, support them, because I'm sure you will get a big kick out of watching all of their fights. And for the next segment of today's program, we now turn it over to our colleague Dennis Principe, who talks to a promising super bantamweight from Ifugao, Carl James Martin.
At kayo po ay nanonood pa rin ng Round by Round. Po si Dennis Principe, at maswerte po tayo makakasama natin ang isa po sa mga sinasabing future ng Philippine boxing, ang batang prospect from Ifugao, Carl James Martin. Carl, Mes, magandang araw sa iyo.
Hello po kuya, magandang araw po sa ating lahat.
Okay. Alright, at medyo matagal na rin yung bakasyon natin, pero kung meron mang development sa iyo, nabalitaan natin na mukhang ikaw ang magiging susunod na #1 rated contender ng Super Bantamweight Division. I don't know kung alam mo na ito, pero kung sakali ba, gaano ka-importante ito sa karir mo?
Opo kuya, nabalitaan ko po yon, and then nanood din po ako ng live ng Game and Amusement Board sa ratings po nila para sa RP. And then yun po, naging #1 po ko contender sa RP sa 122 pounds. Ito po yung malaking tulong kasi ako yung magiging mandatory po para sa champion.
Okay, and yung champion dyan, actually, nagkaroon na before na negosasyon, nagkasundo na kayo, but because of, yun nga, humigpit na naman, no, sa NCR Plus, nawala yung pagkakataon na maglaban kayo. Right now ba, kung sa tingin mo kung talagang ikaw yung maging mandatory ni Mark Heraldo, gaano kalaki ito para sa karir mo?
Napakalaki po na tulong po yan, tsaka syempre experience para sa akin. At totoo lang po, matagal na po sana nakasa yung laban, and then na-extend dahil sa ECQ. Malaking experience po para sa akin to at magiging tulay sana tungo sa pagtatagumpay po.
At alam mo, dapat noong una Heraldo, tapos biglang for a while nagkaroon ng order yung GAB, ano, na hindi ka pwedeng lumaktaw dun sa number 1, ano, na si Saulong. At kayo dapat ni Saulong maglalaban, di ba? So ngayon, na-confirm na ba natin na since nalampasan mo na si Saulong, pwede ka nang rumekta kay Heraldo at hindi mo na kailangan labanan ng parang title eliminator si Ernesto Saulong?
Sa katunayan po, tuloy na po. Kumbaga kami lang maglalaban kasi ako na po yung naging number 1. Wala na pong magiging mandatory. Wala na pong magiging maglaban ng number 1 o number 2 para sa champion. So ako na po yung number 1 at naging mandatory po ng champion. Ako na po yung lalaban para sa mandatory fight defense ng champion sa 122 pounds po.
Alright, so sa ngayon, ano ba? Meron na mga schedule? May plano ba? Paano ba? At yung ba talaga wala ka na ibang tinitignan muna na ibang laban? Like yung mga fans mo, ang gusto, laban na abroad, Meksikano. Pero sa ngayon ba, ano bang plano talaga?
Actually, inaayos na rin po yung fight at ginagawa na rin po ng paraan para matuloy po yung fight. And hindi naman po naiiba na nanonood pa rin ako ng mga laban sa ibang division sa 118 hanggang 126 kasi halos dikit lang din po yung timbang na yon. Then focus lang po sa darating po na fight.
Okay, very good. And ano ba, si Heraldo ba gusto mo o yung title lang o pareho? Kasi alam mo ngayon nauuso na yung mga Pilipino, kapwa sa Pilipino, nagkakapikunan, nagkakahamunan. Ikaw, isa ka na rin dyan. Maraming umahamon sa'yo. Ultimo si General Casimero. Minsan, napukaw mo yung kanyang interest. Ano ba talaga sa'yo? Si Heraldo pa talaga gusto mo? Yung title o pareho?
Sa team ko po kasi, ang inaayos po nila, yung talagang legit na champion po sa RP at maging, kumbaga, sana maging tuloy-tuloy or maging stepping stone ba na maging legit champion po muna ako sa Pilipinas at then kumangat-angat na ang angat ng kalidad para maging contender pagdating po sa World Championship.
Okay, and bukod kay Coach Abel Mes, meron ka rin conditioning coach na bago, si Coach Mel Lantin. Kumusta naman yung tandem nilang dalawa? At bilang bagito sa team mo, si Coach Mel, kumusta naman yung tulong niya sa'yo?
Malaking tulong po kasi maraming pagbabago sa training ko, marami ring mga na kumbaga na-improve po sa lakas ng suntok ko. At yun nga, wala pa po tayong patunay kasi dahil nauusog po yung fight. And then ang inaantay na lang po namin, sa amin ni Coach Mel, Coach Abel, merong magandang chemistry na nangyayari. So maganda po yung kalalabasan siguro pagdating po ng fight.
Okay, Carl James Martin, maraming salamat sa iyo and good luck sa susunod mo laban.
Thank you po. Maraming salamat. Ingat po lahat.
Alright, yan po si Carl James Martin, ang boxing prospect mula sa Ifugao dito po sa Round by Round. Balik tayo sa ating mga host.
Thank you, Dennis. And now we go to our fearless forecast or our fearless fighter, brought to you and presented by Eastern Communications. Ryan, take it away.
Well, you know what? I'm going to throw us a curveball here because I'm going to give a fearless forecast and also name a fearless fighter. Now,
double the effort.
We have this week, the first World Championship fight this week is Kazuto Ioka, who is defending his WBO junior bantamweight title against Francisco Rodriguez Jr. That's on September 1st here and in Tokyo, Japan. Now, my forecast is this, that Kazuto Ioka, who I believe is one of like the best fighters who have not really risen to that pound for pound level, but he's always had that ability. I think he's going to look amazing against Francisco Rodriguez because Rodriguez is right there in his wheelhouse, and he'll be able to do what he wants to do. And now my fearless fighter is going to be Francisco Rodriguez Jr. because he's a tough guy. He came to the Philippines before. He gave his best effort against Donny Nietes, was outclassed, but he is going to Japan to try and win another world title at 115 pounds. He's got a big heart. He's a tough guy, but I think he'll come up short against Kazuto Ioka.
And that was our fearless fighter and our fearless forecast presented by Eastern Communications. And that's the final bell for today's episode of Round by Round presented by Eastern Communications. I'm Boyet Sison.
And I'm Ryan Sangalia. We're on Facebook at 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then on our YouTube channel right after. So like, follow, share, and subscribe now.
On the next edition of Round by Round, Bill Velasco, Ryan Sangalia, and yours truly will answer the bell. Join us on the next edition of Round by Round. All boxing, all Filipino, all the time. See you soon.